It's 2001. A brand new heavy-duty pickup rolls off the line. Under the hood sits something that feels old, massive, unapologetic. 8.1 liters of cast iron, a big block, in a modern truck, at a time when the world was moving towards smaller, more efficient engines. GM doubled down on brute force, and for a moment it worked. But what almost nobody knows is this engine wasn't killed because it was bad. It was killed because it was too good at the wrong time. You think you know this story? Not like this, because the death of the 8.1 Vortec wasn't just about fuel economy. It was about regulations, internal politics, corporate strategy, and a quiet shift that changed trucks forever. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. To understand the 8.1 Vortec, you have to go back decades. Back to a time when displacement was king, when engineers didn't worry about emissions computers or fuel economy stickers, when the answer to every performance question was simply more cubic inches. GM's big block lineage started in the 1960s. Engines like the 454 cubic inch V8 dominated muscle cars, boats, and heavy-duty trucks. These weren't just engines. They were torque monsters. They were cultural statements. They were proof that American engineering could build something massive and make it work. The 454 became legendary. It powered everything from Chevelle to Suburbans. It towed boats. It hauled equipment. It defined what a big block could be. But by the late 1990s, things had changed. Dramatically, emissions laws tightened. Fuel prices fluctuated wildly, and smaller engines like GM's LS-based small blocks were getting smarter, lighter, and more efficient. The automotive world was moving in a new direction. Efficiency was becoming the priority. So why would GM bring back a giant big block? Why would they invest in something that seemed to go against every trend in the industry? Because they had a problem, a serious one. Heavy-duty trucks were getting heavier, fifth-wheel trailers were getting bigger, construction equipment was getting more demanding, customers wanted more towing power than ever before, and diesel engines, especially the Duramax, were starting to dominate. But not everyone wanted diesel. Diesel meant more maintenance, more complexity, higher upfront costs, and for some buyers, it just felt like overkill for their needs. Gas buyers still existed, and they wanted one thing above everything else: torque. Real, usable, low RPM torque that could move mountains without breaking a sweat. So GM went back to the drawing board. They looked at their heritage. They looked at what made the old big blocks so beloved. And what they created was the last true big block they would ever build, the 8.1 liter Vortec. Officially known as the Vortec 8100, this engine displaced 496 cubic inches. That's massive. Nearly 500 cubic inches of pure American V8. It used a bore of 4.25 inches and a stroke of 4.37 inches. Long stroke, big pistons, heavy rotating mass, thick cylinder walls, massive main caps. This wasn't built to rev. It wasn't built to scream down a drag strip. It was built to pull. The compression ratio sat at around 9.1.1. Low by performance standards, but perfect for durability and towing under load. Lower compression meant less stress on internals, less heat buildup during sustained work, better longevity when the engine was pushed hard day after day. In stock form, it made about 340 horsepower and a massive 455 lb-ft of torque. But those numbers don't tell the full story, not even close, because peak torque came in low, around 3,200 RPM. And more importantly, it delivered usable torque even lower than that. At 2,000 RPM, this engine was already making serious power. At 1,500 RPM, it was already pulling hard. This engine didn't scream. It pushed hard, relentlessly. Drop it into a Silverado 2500 HD or a Suburban 2500. Hook up a heavy trailer and it would just go. No drama. No hesitation, no strain, just relentless, unstoppable pull, the kind of power delivery that made drivers feel like they could tow anything, anywhere, anytime. The driving experience was something else entirely. You'd press the accelerator and there was no waiting. no turbo lag, no building of power, just immediate response. The engine would drop into a low rumble, and everything behind you would start moving. Hills didn't matter, headwinds didn't matter. The 8.1 just kept pulling. And for commercial use, it was even more impressive. In medium-duty trucks like the Kodiak and Top Kick, and in marine applications where engines ran for hours at high load, the 8.1 could run for hundreds of thousands of miles. Some fleets reported engines crossing 300,000 miles with minimal internal work. Some marine operators pushed past 400,000 hours of operation. Mechanics loved it. Why? Because it was simple. Cast iron block, cast iron heads, 2 valves per cylinder, pushrod design, no variable valve timing, no complicated electronics, no finicky sensors that would throw codes for no reason. Just old-school engineering done right. You could diagnose problems with basic tools. You could rebuild it in a regular shop. Parts were heavy but accessible, and the learning curve for maintenance was almost non-existent for anyone familiar with older V8s. It was the kind of engine that rewarded proper care with decades of service. But there was a problem. Actually, several. The first issue was weight. This engine was heavy, extremely heavy. The massive cast iron construction that made it so durable also made it a burden. We're talking over 700 pounds for the complete engine assembly. That's significantly more than the LS-based small blocks that were becoming the standard. All that weight sat over the front axle, and that affected everything. Handling became more nose-heavy. Ride quality suffered. Braking performance under load was compromised because the front suspension was already working harder, just supporting the engine. For a heavy-duty truck that would spend its life towing and hauling, this mattered less. But for anything else, it was a compromise. But that wasn't what killed it. The second problem was fuel consumption, and this one was brutal. In real-world driving, the 8.1 Vortec could easily drop into single-digit MPG. We're talking 8, sometimes 7, sometimes even 6 miles per gallon when towing heavy loads. Even unloaded, cruising on the highway, many owners reported 10 to 12 MPG at best. Some couldn't crack double digits no matter how gently they drove. At a time when fuel prices were starting to climb, when gas station visits became painful, that was a hard sell. The 8.1 drank fuel like it was free, and it wasn't. But here's the twist. Truck buyers didn't care that much. If you were buying a 3-4 ton or 1 ton truck, you already expected bad fuel economy. You were hauling, towing, working. You weren't buying a commuter car. Efficiency wasn't the priority. Capability was. Get the job done. Move the load. Don't leave me stranded. That's what mattered. So why kill it? Why would GM walk away from an engine that customers actually liked, that mechanics trusted, that had earned a reputation for reliability? That's where things get interesting, because the answer isn't simple. Around the early 2000s, emissions regulations were tightening fast. The EPA was pushing for lower NOx emissions and cleaner combustion across the board. Every manufacturer was scrambling to comply, and big blocks struggled with that. The 8.1's large displacement and relatively simple combustion design made it harder to meet stricter emission standards without major redesign. The combustion chambers were optimized for torque, not cleanliness. The fuel system was efficient for its era, but primitive by emerging standards. And redesigning it wasn't simple, not even close. To make the 8.1 compliant long-term, GM would have needed to add advanced technologies. Things like variable valve timing, more sophisticated fuel injection, better exhaust gas recirculation, possibly even cylinder deactivation to shut down half the engine during light cruising. All of that was possible. But here's the problem. The architecture was old. The basic design dated back decades. The block casting, the head design, the pushrod layout, all of it was rooted in an era before these technologies existed. Adapting modern tech to a massive pushrod big block wasn't just expensive, it was inefficient. You'd end up with a heavy, complex engine that still wouldn't match the efficiency of smaller, newer designs. You'd spend millions in development for an engine that would still be inferior to the competition. The math didn't work, so GM had a choice: invest millions into updating an aging platform that would still be compromised, or move forward with something better. And by better, they didn't mean bigger, they meant smarter. At the same time, GM's LS-based engines were evolving rapidly, and they were impressive. Engines like the 6.0-liter Vortec small block were getting stronger, more efficient, and more refined. With aluminum components, better airflow, improved combustion chamber design, and more sophisticated engine management, they could produce impressive power without the massive displacement. A 6.0-liter might not match the raw torque of an 8.1 on paper, but it came close enough, and it did it with better fuel economy, lower emissions, less weight over the front axle, and easier compliance with future regulations. The trade-offs were becoming harder to justify. Then came the next wave. Engines like the 6.2-liter V8 pushed things even further. Higher compression ratios, better flowing heads, more advanced tuning, variable valve timing that optimized performance across the entire RPM range. Suddenly, the gap between small block and big block started to disappear. What once required massive displacement could now be achieved with smarter engineering. And then there was diesel. The Duramax 6.6L V8 changed everything. With over 500 lb-ft of torque in early versions and much more in later models, it completely outclassed the 8.1 in pulling power, and it did it more efficiently. Diesel fuel contained more energy. Diesel combustion was more thermally efficient. The Duramax could tow heavier loads while using less fuel. Yes, diesel trucks were more expensive up front. The engine and transmission combinations cost thousands more. Maintenance was more complex, but for serious towing, for commercial applications, for anyone who would put real miles on their truck, diesel made more sense. The numbers proved it. So now GM had three options competing internally. A big, thirsty gas engine that customers liked but regulators hated. A modern, efficient small block that was getting better every year. And a powerful diesel that dominated heavy-duty use and commanded premium prices. You can probably guess what happened next, but the truth is even more strategic than that. And down, by 2004, the writing was on the wall. Sales of the 8.1 Vortec were declining, not because it was bad, it was still doing exactly what it was designed to do, but because customers were shifting. Some moved to diesel for maximum towing capability. Others chose smaller gas engines for better daily usability and lower operating costs. The middle ground that the 8.1 occupied started to disappear. It became a niche within a niche, too thirsty for casual users, not efficient enough to compete with diesel for hardcore towers. And GM wasn't just thinking about current customers, they were thinking about the future. Fuel economy standards were tightening. Corporate average fuel economy, CAFE regulations, were becoming more aggressive every year. The government was mandating higher fleet-wide averages, and every inefficient engine dragged down the number. Every 8.1 sold made compliance harder, and the 8.1, it was a liability. One engine producing 8 mpg could hurt the entire lineup's compliance numbers. It could force GM to sell more small cars at a loss just to balance the equation. It could cost them millions in fines if they missed targets. So even if it sold decently, it was costing GM in ways most people never saw, in ways that didn't show up on dealer invoices. The true cost was hidden, but it was real. There were also production costs to consider. Building a big block isn't cheap. More material per engine, heavier components that require stronger tooling, more stress on manufacturing systems, longer machining times, higher quality control requirements for the larger castings. Meanwhile, small block engines could be produced more efficiently in higher volumes across multiple vehicle platforms. The same basic engine architecture could power a Corvette, a Silverado, a Tahoe, and a Camaro. Economies of scale, shared development costs, simplified supply chains. The 8.1 didn't have that advantage. It was a niche engine for a niche audience, built on a unique platform that couldn't be shared. And in a world moving toward efficiency and global platforms, niche doesn't survive long. Accountants don't like niche. Shareholders don't like niche. The business case was dying. By 2006, GM made the decision. Production of the 8.1 Vortec ended. Just like that, the last true GM big block for trucks was gone. The lineage that stretched back to the 1960s, the Mark IV heritage, the 454 legacy, all of it, finished. No dramatic farewell, no special edition, no marketing celebration of what it had accomplished, just quietly discontinued. And most people didn't even notice. It slipped away without fanfare. Another option removed from the order sheet, another engine code that stopped appearing in VINs. But those who used it, they remembered. Because despite its flaws, despite the fuel bills and the weight and the dated technology, the 8.1 had something modern engines often don't: character. It felt unstoppable. It sounded deep and mechanical. It didn't rely on complexity or computer tricks. When you pressed the throttle, you heard something real. You felt something substantial. It just worked, year after year, mile after mile, load after load. Today, the legacy of the 8.1 Vortec is strange. It's not as famous as the old muscle car big blocks. It didn't dominate racing headlines or magazine covers. It didn't become a cultural icon with posters on garage walls. But among truck enthusiasts and mechanics, it has a reputation: reliable, simple, brutally effective, honest, and in some ways, irreplaceable. Modern engines may produce more power per liter. They may be more efficient. They may meet every emission standard. They may be smarter in every measurable way. But they're also more complicated, more sensors that fail, more systems that interact in unpredictable ways, more software that needs updates, more specialized tools required for diagnosis, more things that can go wrong in ways that aren't obvious. The 8.1 didn't care about any of that. It was built for a specific job, and it did that job incredibly well, until the world changed around it. So what really killed the 8.1 Vortec? It wasn't just fuel economy. It wasn't just emissions. It wasn't even diesel competition alone. It was timing. The industry was shifting. Regulations were tightening. Technology was evolving. Customer expectations were changing. Corporate priorities were realigning. And the 8.1 just belonged to a different era. An era where bigger was always better. An era where simplicity mattered more than optimization. An era where brute force solved problems that computers now handle. An era that quietly came to an end, and nobody held a funeral. In the end, the 8.1 Vortec didn't fail. It was left behind. Because sometimes being powerful isn't enough. You have to be efficient, adaptable, future-proof, compliant, cost-effective. And the 8.1, it was none of those things. But for the people who drove it, who towed with it, who relied on it every single day to earn their living, it didn't need to be, because it already did exactly what it was built to do. Nothing more, nothing less. And maybe that's why people still respect it today, why they still search for clean examples, why they still swap them into projects, because it represents something that doesn't exist anymore. Pure, simple, unapologetic capability. If you enjoyed this deep dive, let me know in the comments what engine story you want next. Another forgotten giant, a legendary rivalry, or something completely underrated. And make sure to subscribe, because the next story might change how you see engines forever.